The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back, comfortably zoned with the Zig Zag Man in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, in the greatest state in the Union. Next to New York and Boston, we'll say our guest, Jerry Feitelberg. We are celebrating Jerry. How are you?
Well, thank you, Ralph. It's always a pleasure to do a podcast with you.
Under these circumstances, it really is a pleasure because, as I see it, we've retained democracy. And the votes are not all in. There's still a lot of questions, but you will have to say that the Dems did in unexpectedly well. Am I correct in your eyes?
Yes, you are correct. The thing that was interesting is that the pundits, all the pundits and all the polls had were predicting that there would be a red wave and that they were going to take the House by 40 seats and they were going to take the Senate by 3 seats. And none of that materialized because they had an unexpected greater turnout than they did with early voting than they did in 2018. And the abortion issue, a lot of women voted, a lot more women voted, and the turnout helped the Democrats. And as you said, democracy was preserved. The House and the Senate are still up in the air, but it was not a red wave at all.
Okay, now tell me what the difference is if they win the Senate by one vote and the House by one vote. What does that mean as opposed to winning it by 20 or losing it by 20?
Well, in the Senate, the senators have the filibusters, and they need 60 votes to get anything meaningful passed. So even if the Republicans have the House and they pass the crazy legislation, it won't pass in the Senate. And if it should, for whatever reason, it goes to the president, it will get vetoed. So it looks like the Dems are going to have. They need to win 2 out of the remaining 3 races in question. It looks like Mark Kelly is going to prevail in Arizona. It looks like there's going to be a runoff between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. And I can't believe that 1.5 million people voted for Walker. He is unfit and unqualified to be a senator, let alone he's not qualified to hold any public office, let alone be a senator. But I mean, it just shows you how politics have evolved these days. So that, but I think.
Do you think Trump has hit the final nail in his coffin politically because of the people he endorsed are not only crazy, but they're people like Taylor Greene and Herschel Walker. I think thinking people are starting to see that he's off the boat, he's off the rails.
Well, certainly, if you've been paying attention to any of the rallies he's been having lately, he's gone full QAnon, and he's making all these statements without a shred of evidence for back up what he's saying. In fact, today, Judge Middlebrooks, in one of the court cases that they filed suit against Hillary Clinton and others, the judge sanctioned the attorneys. They had to pay $50,000 fine, and they had to pay the legal offenses of one of Mrs. Clinton's attorneys. So, they make all kinds of wild accusations that they're spying on him, that they have all these conspiracies, that the Democrats are doing all these things against them, and they just have. Anytime you ask them to produce the evidence, they can't do it, and their game is up. So he can make all these wild allegations, but when they go to court, you better have it. You better have it backed up in documentation. It's totally different in court, and he's losing in court. He also has to deal with the fact that there's a lot of litigation against him, primarily from Letitia James in New York, where they're suing the Trump organization, not Trump himself, but the Trump organization, for $250 million. And Trump formed this Trump organization too, and James got a judge to order that all the transactions of the Trump organization be scrutinized by a monitor, so that they can't transfer the assets from one entity to the other. And Trump fought that, but lost. There is going to be a monitor. So, and then he's got the Mar-a-Lago case with the documents that the Department of Justice. The Georgia case. He's got the January 6th committee to deal with. The insurrection and all that stuff is all going to come to a head pretty soon. And so I think, your question is, a lot of people are fed up with this nonsense, and they're willing to move on past that. Unfortunately, Marjorie Taylor Greene got reelected, and unfortunately, J.D. Vance got elected. But also, it looks like Lauren Boebert's not going to retain her seat. She might be out. Sarah Palin did not get elected in Alaska. So it's hard to say. The Democrats still have a chance of holding the House. They need 218. I think the Republicans have 210 at the moment. I don't know what the Democratic count is, but it's very possible they might retain the House, and it's very possible that they retain the Senate. So that would be good for the country.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever think you'd live to see the day when people are thinking of Sarah Palin, who you just mentioned, as a moderate Republican?
Yeah, it's hard to believe, isn't it? It really is. And here you have people like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and others. There were 10 Republicans that voted to impeach when they were in the House. They voted to impeach, to impeach Trump. On the second impeachment. And of course, you know what happened to Liz Cheney when she ran for re-election in Wyoming. She was thoroughly trounced. But she, it's like it was the cost of doing the right thing. She did the right thing. Adam Kinzinger did the right thing, serving on the J6 committee. And you might not agree with their politics, but you have to say they did the right thing.
Can you tell us the difference between DeSantis being in power and Trump? Is it going to be noticeably better or worse for the country?
DeSantis is just as ruthless and just as kooky as Trump. The only one thing is he's smarter, and he's just as bad though. So you really have to be aware of what's going on. Glenn Youngkin up in Virginia became governor. He sort of poo-pooed that he was a Trumper, but he was a Trumper. He is a Trumper, and he's trying to do the same things in Virginia. And again, he doesn't make these crazy statements like Trump does, but he's just as bad. So these guys have learned not to be as vocal and come out with all these conspiracy theories and all this crazy stuff, but they're pretty bad. And yet DeSantis won by 20 points over a former governor. Charlie Crist was the former governor of Florida and just couldn't get any traction going.
Why do you suppose that is in Florida?
I don't know. I don't understand it. And maybe it's because people are older, more conservative. Certainly, what happened in Miami-Dade, they have a large Cuban population, and the Cuban population has migrated to the Republican side rather than the Democratic side. And I have one of our good friends who was the Spanish language broadcaster for the A's. He was a Cuban refugee. Castro took his father's business and they confiscated his home. Came to the United States. He served in the Army. Got drafted. Served 2 years in the Army, and he is a conservative, and he's definitely afraid of government overreach and the government, seizing assets to do the programs that they want to do. That's how he views it, whether it's right or wrong, but that's how they view it. And I think a lot of the Cubans in the Cuban community down in Miami view it the same way. So they're anti-government doing a lot of things, and it's understandable from their point of view.
Okay, I'd like to know how this came about. Is it as much the Democrats' fault for not ruling properly in power, vis-a-vis Biden, or is it more the Republicans' ineptitude in running campaigns? How do you rate the Biden administration? Good, bad, and indifferent.
Well, they've gotten several programs through, and they've also spent a lot of money. The Democrats have since the 30s, when we had the Great Depression, most of the programs, the social welfare programs that we have, are a direct result of the Democratic Party. First of all, was Social Security. Then they had that helped give people some, they pay into it, and then they get, they get something to live on as they get older into their retirement years. They had all the WPA program and the Tennessee Valley projects that they had during the Depression that created work for a lot of people. And of course, after World War II, when the United States was the only superpower in the world and our economy was the only one really doing well, we helped rebuild the world. And then we decided the Democrats passed through the Medicare, they passed through the Voting Rights Act, they got active in civil rights. And so they did these things. All these programs are to make sure that people have the right to vote, make sure that people, when they get older and have Medicare, that they don't lose their entire life savings paying hospital bills. So these are two of the programs that they had. Then the Medicaid program came about during the Johnson era, and government funds a lot of programs for poor people. And so those are all Democratic programs, government programs. And the Republicans have been on the wrong side of history. They've been opposed to all of them. Obamacare came through in 2010. It provided medical insurance for 20-30 million people that didn't have health insurance before. And so the Republicans want to get rid of that too. So, so I have to say that the Democratic Party has tried to make sure that everybody is included, and the Republicans don't see it that way. They see it as spending. Everybody's on their own. You have to find your own way. You pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and that's their thinking on these things.
Okay. Do you think Biden will run again?
It's a possibility. He's going to be 82 years old in 2 years. And if he has to run again, my God, and serve another 4 years, he'll be 86 years old by the time he's done. He seems to be, his mental state seems to be okay. He seems to be in good health right now. But as you know, at this stage in life where we're at, anything can happen. But if he's in good health and he feels he's willing to take on the enormous job of being the president, yeah, I think he will run.
Do you think he's electable?
Well, that's a good question. Depends on who he runs against. If Trump runs, I think he'd beat Trump again. I think the public is fed up with Trump. Trump might get 35% of the vote, but you got to remember they work the Electoral College, and they're if Trump runs again, they're going to make sure that the battleground states, the 6 or 7 battleground states, are in their pocket. So,
do you think Garland will step in? Garland and the DOJ will step in and kind of really put the clamps down on Trump to make it impossible for him to run?
Well, I would like to see something happen because, as you know, from the time, even though he might be indicted, by the time it comes to trial, it could be a year later. So we're going to be indicted in 2023 and go to trial in 2024, and he's going to, I don't know. The sooner the indictments come down, the better it will be to get rid of him. And he's worked very hard for an orange jumpsuit, and I think he's ready for it. How hard he's worked, and I think the time has come. I mean, these elections are proof that he is endorsing candidates that are not in the best interest of the country. Absolutely.
And I think he's putting off. The problem is he raises money every time he's accused of something. Every time he comes up against the courts, he raises money from his base who will support him no matter what. That's the crazy part. And is that ever going to stop? Are the people going to wise up? That's the question.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. One of the things that came up the last couple of days is that if he announces his candidacy for president, the Republican National Committee, the RNC, will no longer pay for his legal defense. He'll have to pay for it himself.
Wow!
And he's been raising tons of money. He's got something in his super PAC that he created is $200 million, and he's not been shoveling it out to the other candidates. He's been using it for maybe his own legal expenses.
Okay. Why has he spent so much time in making sure his taxes don't come to the light of the day?
Well, that's a good question. They were handed over to to some group, and I think Tish James got them because of the law in her suit against Trump. Because they, he I guess they were looking to see how he got bank loans and how he got the favorable evaluations on his property, so he had to lower his taxes. But this one was, I think, going to the Ways and Means Committee, and they're not going to get it before the end of the year. And of course, if the Congress changes and the Democrats are not in power, the Congress will never get his tax returns.
Yeah. Well, if the Congress changes, will the February 6th committee be called off as well?
Yeah, J6 committee will be disbanded immediately.
Does Garland have enough evidence, if they disband that committee, that he can bring charges?
The committee is going to issue a report, I think, before the end of the year. And they may make a criminal referral, and they may even offer to give them all the evidence they have. But keep in mind that the DOJ probably has a lot of the same evidence. So it may not be necessary for them to hand over everything.
And my final question about Garland is he apt to indict or prosecute Hunter Biden?
No, that's hard to say. That may be an issue, but it's not going to happen right away. And not at this. As far as I know, they're not investigating him. There might be if the Republicans take over, they might have a congressional hearing about that. But right now, it's not before the Justice Department.
Okay. Overall, are we in better shape than we were in terms of having hope as a country?
A little bit, but there's still a lot of crazies in the Congress. Jim Jordan is still there. Andy Biggs is still there. I can't think of all of them, but there's enough of them still in the Congress to keep things going. Instead of trying to own the libs and hate the libs, the time has come for both parties to get together and find solutions to the problems that we have in the country.
Do you think the tragic Pelosi shooting is going to bring them together because of the reaction of some of the crazies, Donald Trump Jr. and what have you, that was just so over the top when you're talking about a human being being, politics aside, did that deaden the chances of those people being accepted again? I mean, they said things that you would think, how could people vote for them after that?
I don't know. Nancy Pelosi, what happened to Paul Pelosi was horrific. He's lucky to be alive, and Nancy Pelosi was the target when they had the insurrection on January 6th. The mob was looking for her, and they were looking for Mike Pence, and I have no doubt in my mind that had they found them, harm would have come to both of them. And this is why we're pleased that there wasn't a red wave, that the crazies didn't take over, and it should be a warning to a lot of people that when you say these things and you keep saying them over and over, there are repercussions, and Paul Pelosi was a repercussion of that, of the crazy going after Paul Pelosi and what he wanted to do to Nancy Pelosi. So there are crazy people out there, and this is what happens. And you got to remember, going back to the 2020 election, when Trump gathered his minions in Washington. He's repeating the big lie over and over again that the election was stolen. The election wasn't stolen. These people were told that they weren't stolen. They were told that it was a fair and free election, and they chose to do otherwise. They chose to invade the Capitol, and they did a lot of damage to our building owned by the people of the United States. And for what? For a guy that lost the election and should not have been president, except for the freak. It was a freak because we have the Electoral College, and people. You have 50 state elections rather than a true national election, and the person who actually loses the popular vote can end up being president, getting more votes in the Electoral College. It doesn't make sense, but
well,
it happens.
Those were the rules before the election, and I think it was Hillary Clinton's ineptitude in campaigning and going to the states that mattered, in being running a strategic campaign, and I blame Nancy Debbie Wasserman Schultz for negating Bernie Sanders and disenfranchising a lot of people. A lot of people wanted him, and I think, looking back, I don't think he would have allowed Trump to walk over him. He would have answered in debates and made Trump look like an idiot.
Yeah, that may be so, but we can't go back to 2016. We can't. There's no way to correct it. Yes, Hillary ran a bad campaign. She took for granted that she was going to win Pennsylvania or Wisconsin and didn't show up in those states and campaign hard enough. But we had Trump for 4 years, and there's not much we can do. And of course, he's been blathering for 2 years about how the election was stolen and all this nonsense about how his property was raided in Mar-a-Lago. He took things that didn't belong to him. It belongs to the people of the United States. All those documents are not his. He thinks they're his, but they're not. And now we're hearing that from the National Archives that certain gifts that were given to the president, he thinks are his. And the law says that if you get a gift and it's worth less than $415, I guess you can take it. It belongs to them. But if it's over $415, if you want it, you have to pay the government the market value. And there's a pair of diamond earrings that are probably worth a lot more. They're gold. There's some sort of gold, something with a lot of gold in it. Those are missing, and they believe that he has them, and he has to turn it back over to the National Archives. And he's been unwilling to do it. The archives are delineating stuff that's been stolen, and Trump's still trying to hide stuff. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, well, I'm rooting for Garland to come in and make it all right. I'd like to wake up one day and see him in an orange jumpsuit and in shackles, and I just hope we all live long enough to see that.
Well, Garland doesn't want to have anything happen like the case against Tom Barrack. Barrack was accused of being a foreign agent for one of the United Arab Emirates, and they took him to trial. The DOJ took him to trial, and they lost. Barrack got acquitted. So they want to have all their I's dotted and their T's crossed and everything lined up 100% in order to nail him. So I know we're all impatient to have it done, but it's going to get done.
Okay. Hey, thank you for your analysis. You put things in order in a way that is succinct and to the point. And I'm grateful, Jerry. You make me feel good.
Well, I hope that I hope that Trump does get indicted and convicted, and I hope that Garland has everything all lined up and ready to go. I hate this, but we're all frustrated. We all want justice done. We all saw what happened on January 6th. 5 people died that day, and it was just a terrible tragedy for the country. And it was all because of all the machinations and all the conspiracy between the lawyers and his minions to try and overthrow a fair and free election. There was no fraud in any of the elections. All the machines worked properly. All this is all nonsense. And it's just amazing how many people bought into it. You know, they bought into the big lie. If you say something over and over and over again, you start to believe it. And a lot of people started believing that. And you heard what a lot of people said when they testified to the J6 committee. When they asked him, why were you in Washington? He says, because the president told us to be here. So he told us to be here. And they did what he wanted. And Trump did not. Trump for 3 hours and whatever minutes, 187 minutes, sat and watched this and refused to do anything. What a president would do would be to protect the nation, protect the Capitol. He would have called out the National Guard immediately. And he sat there watching it because he thought they were doing it for him. And if you watch his rallies, he goes there ostensibly to support people like Chuck Grassley or to the other Republicans, and he goes out and speaks for an hour and a half, and it's all me, and all my grievances, and that's what Trump is, me, all the time.
Yeah. A worse disaster than we could have imagined 3 or 4 years ago. I thought this would have blown over by now, and it goes on. And as Tally says, my Tally, the nightmare continues night after night. We go to sleep with bad news, wake up, maybe it's a little better, but it keeps everybody on their toes to the point where it's exhausting. It's just been a horrible nightmare for the country.
Yeah, and the guy's modus operandi was to, string things out, get all these delays, and he stiffed a lot of contractors that has done business with him. And when you do that, it costs people money. And he had lots of money. And you take an average contractor that's done work for him, they don't have the money to take him all the way to the Supreme Court or wherever he's going on his cases. And they just throw their hands up and say they walk away and they lose their money. And it's really sad. And he's been doing this for years. And that's how he's gotten away with everything. But the government can outlast him. He cannot outspend the government. They got more resources than he does. So keep that in mind.
I will, and you make all of this easier to bear, Jerry, by throwing in a bit of realism, and it's going to turn out okay. I'm convinced, but the damage that he's done. And if nothing else, like you say, 5 people were killed in the insurrection. If that isn't enough for people, I don't know. Cops testifying how there weren't enough of them to defend against these crazy people. I just hope he's brought to justice. How about that?
I hope so too. And this will
nice
be
and simple.
This will be my final thought on this. When we were in Washington about 10 days ago, we went to a bar mitzvah in Northern Virginia, and we went up to the Capitol building. And as we're going into the Capitol building, there were two Capitol policemen there, but they were armed with machine guns, and that's a very frightening sight to see. Capitol Police armed with machine guns as we're going into the building. And when I was younger, and I made my first trip to the Capitol building, I didn't have back in those days. I was at Fort Dix, and we spent a weekend in Washington. And I went to the Capitol building. We just entered the Capitol building. It was no big deal. Now, of course, you have to go through metal detectors and make sure that you don't have any arms or whatever. And I don't remember ever seeing a Capitol policeman when I went in the first time, but they were there this time, making sure that people aren't going to do anything that they shouldn't be doing. But it was just striking to see the comparison. I know when I was in France, I'd see French army soldiers carrying automatic weapons, but it was kind of disturbing to see Americans with automatic weapons at the Capitol building.
Yeah, that makes a lasting impression on one.
Yeah,
how things have changed in the course of our lifetime.
For sure.
And do you think there's any politician on the horizon that can make it okay? Is there a Democrat, a young Democrat with ideas and a certain amount of honesty, if you will? Is there anyone out there that you think can help us?
Well, I think that the Democrats will be looking at some of the young governors that are Democrats. I'm certain that Gavin Newsom will be looked at. I think that Josh Shapiro, who got elected in Pennsylvania, might be a potential presidential candidate in the future. It's hard to say. But there are some bright young people. Congressman Dan Goldman, who was a prosecutor in the first impeachment trial, got elected to Congress. We'll see how he does. And there are people out there that are capable.
Are there some Republicans out there that can work across the aisle and are trustworthy, that you may consider voting for against Biden, say?
That's a possibility with Trump not in the picture, and the Republicans not afraid of saying anything. That might be something that would transpire. Unfortunately, I don't know who at this point who would step forward. Are they going to be the loudmouths going to take over? The Jim Jordans and the Marjorie Taylor Greens. Who knows? We'll have to see.
Could Liz Cheney be a candidate for that?
She might be a candidate. It might be. She might have a lot of opposition within the Republican Party, though. But she might be in position. a lot of the Democratic presidential people have had Republicans in their administration. I know that Obama had a former senator from Iowa as his defense secretary. So, and a lot of times some of the Democratic presidents have had Republicans as Treasury secretaries. So there has been cases where that's happened.
And my final question, is Pence a factor?
I don't think so.
Okay. That's from the gut.
Yeah. I
Okay.
know he's going to try, but I don't think he has enough support.
Okay. You would think that he gets some sympathy for approving the election, although that was his job and the only thing he could have done. But in terms of how he was treated by Trump, he left him to get killed. Gallows out there.
Yes, absolutely.
People screaming, "Kill Pence! Kill Pelosi!"
Yeah, well,
can't get that.
That tweet that he put out that Pence did not do the right thing set off the mob.
Right. That should be enough for Garland.
Yeah.
And the DOJ. Exactly. Right there. Jerry, let's hope for the best. Thank you, sir. I enjoy your company. And Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, telling you like it is. We don't like it sometimes, but you gotta discuss it and talk about it. Thank you again, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll be back when we're back, and adios and happy trails.
Okay, Ralph. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks again, Jerry.
Okay. Bye-bye now.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.